Hello, everyone. My name is Ari Chambers. I'm the founder of HighlightHER, which is Bleacher Report and Turner Sports' women's platform, and I'm super excited to be here to talk about being a woman in women's sports.
I'm Kaila Pettis. I'm the Senior Director of Brand and Content for FC Cincinnati, and I'm also the co-founder of The Locker Room.
I'm Jessie, Kavana, Art Director for the Brooklyn Nets. So excited to be here for you guys today.
Now, I can't necessarily see the slides, so I'm going to just look and see if we done started right now. Let's see. So I'll just give you a little background on me. I am from Raleigh, North Carolina, and I wear that badge very proudly because North Carolina in particular is a state that really, really uplifts women and girls in basketball. And I grew up around women's basketball my whole life, being from Raleigh. Coach Kaila, the then NC State women's head coach, I had the privilege of watching her and stepping into that head coach role and creating such a successful program that sold out, comparable to the men. And then down the street, we had Sylvia Fowles, and then down the street, back when the Charlotte Sting existed, I had the privilege of being able to witness that. So just being surrounded by women and girls in sport that performed at such an excellent level was where I knew I wanted to be there from a young age. Touring around with the Carolina Flames, which is now Chris Paul. He's heavily involved in giving back to that girls basketball program, just being raised around that. So come my years after school, I saw a blank space where I was a professional cheerleader for the New York Knicks, Rangers, and Liberty, and saw the discrepancy between the Knicks coverage versus the Liberty coverage. And I'm like, this is not making sense to me. This is the top 144 athletes in and out of the world's most famous arena. Why can I count on one hand? And Erica Ayala, she was in the crowd. She was one of the 5 that we saw there. And so it was just really confusing to me why nobody was talking about the WNBA. And again, I had the privilege of being raised around these athletes. And so was able to say, hey, girl, do you want your story told real quick? Let me meet you at your hotel. I'm going to put my phone up because, the power of social media. We have to see this before it is in existence. So sorry to Sam Tager and the rest of the WNBA PR that saw me in the locker room with the phones before when we had to go against those people with the big cameras. But I was recording interviews on my phone and posting them on Twitter, on YouTube, wherever anybody would listen. Oh, there's Erica. We had our little pregame with A&E with our little tripod in our phones. But anyways, it was very grassroots. And Bleacher Report and Turner Sports actually found me and said, do you want to build our women's platform from the ground up? And I said, I don't know, because I'm very much an organic grassroots type of person. But we found alignment and was able to create HighlightHER, which is a community to uplift and empower girls and women in sport and culture, no matter the age, level, ability, or sport. So it was a push for me. I'm used to women's basketball. I didn't even know women's hockey was a thing in the pro level. Like, who would have thought? I'm from the South. We don't do the ice. That's cold. So we don't do that. And then I was able to talk to softball while I'm advocating for the WNBA to get more money. I'm finding out they're making, $5,000 a season. I'm like, oh, yikes, we complain about 70,000, which is bad, but y'all making 5? That's crazy. And then learning about the NWSL, which again, Mia Hamm, that was Raleigh right there down the street. I got to see her. And so HighlightHER, we had a very, very grassroots level situation where we didn't go to market until 2 years into the business. And so I got to be able to be in the weeds with the fans and know exactly what they want, especially being a fan of the women's game myself and finding alignment with different partners as we were able to grow. And we were the fastest growing women's platform in 2020. I think organically we are still in that top, top 2 spots. So just knowing that everything is very pure and intentional on the women's side was really special to me. We found a partner in Zell that is one of my favorite partners because we were able to do an initiative, which if you can see on the screen right here, we have the legend Sylvia Fowles. I'm so sad that she's retiring because I know she has 5 more years in her, but she wants to start a family. And then you have Natasha Cloud of the Washington Mystics, and they both play in the WNBA. We were able to partner with Zell for her home court, which is actually nominated for a #Sports Award, so pray about me tonight, y'all. Thank y'all. But we immortalized these wonderful athletes in the communities that they impacted. So we went down to Little Haiti, Miami for Sylvia Fowles, her actual hometown. And I'm talking about, went back to her neighborhood. And so the OGs of the neighborhood was like, look at like Loretta, and that's her mama. And so just being able to connect with the community in that, painting a mural of her and giving back a monetary donation to the youth basketball program of her choice. For Sylvia Fowles, for example, she has an AAU team, the Sylvia Fowles AAU team, Miami Suns. And so we were able to give them a monetary gift so that they can go to nationals. So everything with me is very intentional on the women's sports side. I'm a woman in women's sports. I chose the hardest path possible. I mean, and that's fine, but at least it's with intention and with a lot of love and a lot of passion behind it. And that's really my story. So I guess I'll pass the mic on over.
Man, now I gotta follow that. Okay.
Good luck.
No, so Kaila Pettis, always loved sports. I played sports. Unfortunately, had a bum knee, ended my career, but the one thing I always wanted to do is stay connected to the game. So I actually went to school for industrial design. I thought I was going to be an engineer.
Yeah, you did.
I went to school for industrial design. I thought I was going to be an engineer. I minored in Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, and I was on my way to China, and I remember my boyfriend at the time was playing basketball overseas. And so, sidebar, I was shooting like music videos and always doing things to kind of stay creative, but connected to sports. So he's like, hey, I need a mixtape or a basketball mixtape. And I'm like, why? Why do you need that? And he's like, I need this. It'll help me actually get a job. So here I am creating like these basketball mixtapes. And then next he's like, well, I need a logo to brand myself. I'm like, for what? You're not even on a team yet. And so that was kind of my first take into like branding a player in sports. And I saw the impact of it. He actually got a contract, which I was like, thank me. I should get paid for this. But it was so interesting to see that. But during that time, I was still working as an industrial designer in the point-of-purchase industry. So if you go in Best Buy, all those like retail displays, kind of like headphones and turn the music up, I was doing those. So if you go into the stores, please turn the music up. That's what they're intended for. No one actually does it. They get nervous.
I never knew that was a thing.
It's a thing.
Okay.
It's a whole thing. So you get paid very well to make those displays that no one touches. But still, moonlighting at night, doing these graphics and things, and just one day I quit my job. I just like showed up today and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I went home and my grandma was like, you are a psychopath. Like, you don't have a job lined up or anything. But I was still creating these like highlight mixtapes, doing these videos, kind of branding other players that I knew. All my friends were still playing. I had imposter syndrome because I'm like over here with a bum knee. And from that point, I kind of deep dove into the sports industry. I went to work in Washington State, at Washington State University in Pullman. I don't know if anyone ever's been to Pullman, but there is nothing out there. But it allowed me to focus on truly figuring out what it is that I wanted. And from that, it was like, okay, college sports, this is awesome. I was working with like 20 different sports. I was learning badminton, volleyball. I'd never seen that. So I was like, this is awesome. I actually like that, working with the players and figuring out how to tell their stories. And shortly after that, I played basketball for a while. I was pretty good until I got hurt. And I had the opportunity to go work at Rutgers with Coach Stringer. And that was kind of the turning point in my career. I'm like, man, this is a legend. She's influential in so many ways, and she pushed me. She's like, hey, you suck. Why did we not get coverage on this last night? Why is this social post like, you didn't make me look good? It's like looking at things from so many different angles, and being able to work with that team, you truly become part of the team working for a team. So I'm like, okay, how can I best represent you? Benai Jelani was a player that I was working with closely, and she ended up getting hurt, and she came back to kind of spend a summer with us and develop, and seeing like, okay, Naj, how can we actually brand this? Can we make you some custom sneakers? Can we do like a social campaign and things like that? And just working with the different players, I honestly fell in love with it. But eventually I was like, all right, I want a new challenge now. I kind of got in a rut of, once Coach Stringer hit her 1,000th win, I was like, man, this is the hallmark of my career. And I'm like, but what's after this? So I had an opportunity to go to Atlanta and work in soccer, which, I don't know. I didn't know anything about soccer. I'd never seen soccer. And I had the opportunity to choose between football and soccer with the Falcons and then Atlanta United. And so everyone naturally is like, Falcons, NFL. I'm like, but they're already established. This soccer team had nothing. We were building this from the ground up. So I'm like, hey, this is an opportunity for me to come in and truly see what I'm capable of. So here we go. Second year, we win the MLS championship. Insane. But I also learned, and I think someone said this in the think Insung actually said it, your work starts as soon as you win. Literally as soon as you win. We were like, how do we build a parade in Atlanta, which no one ever thought we would be successful as a soccer team. So
I love how every Atlanta team is like, I got a parade to do.
yeah, it's like, okay, parade. It's like, okay, airport graphics, billboards, news outlets, like social graphics, come up with a new campaign. How does that campaign evolve? Do we have retail? Do we have anything that people can latch on to? So being in Atlanta for 3.5 years was amazing. I learned so much, and again, hit that wall of, okay, we've won a championship. I've elevated myself in my career. What's next? We had a Juneteenth special, I think, last year. And they said, okay, you've done all these things. What do you want to do? I'm like, well, I want to become the first black female creative director in pro sports. Period. And when I said that, the lady's like, oh, okay, so like eventually you'll do that. And I'm like, no, I want to work towards that now. And from that moment on, I was like, okay, I'm laser focused on figuring out what it is and what it takes to get to that position. So I communicated that to leadership. I was like, hey, this is what I want to become, this is what I want to do, and this is why. From that point, it's like, all right, let's go. I had an opportunity to go to FC Cincinnati, which is the worst team in the MLS, was the worst team in the MLS. I think we were in last place 3 years in a row. So imagine working for a team that literally is in last place for 3 years in a row. There's no upside to that, you think, coming in. So I'm like, hey, this is an amazing opportunity to come in, set a foundation, and truly do that. So last year, I think I took that role, and in February of this year, I was actually promoted to the Senior Director of Brand and Content. So I was excited about that, but being in this role has helped me so much because I realized there are so many people that don't know what it takes to actually be in that role. I had no idea what a creative director was. I was like, oh yeah, I'll never be, I told my creative director in Atlanta, I'll never be that. I was like, I don't ever want to stop being creative or doing graphics. I'm like, all you do is sit in meetings. It's boring. Literally, I was like, you sit in meetings, you come back stressed. I don't know that I really truly want that. I'll always just want to create. And being in this role now, I realize it's so much more to that. It's more about like the people that are around me. How do I inspire them? How do I influence them? How do I make you realize like there are so many things you can learn from each other? So I'm grateful to be in this position, and I mean, here I am today.
Yes, ma'am.
Love it.
Yeah, you are.
No, yeah. It's first of all, it's such an honor to be sitting up here next to these two incredible women. I'm so honored to be here next to you guys. You guys are fantastic inspiration. My name is Jessie, Kavana, art director for the Brooklyn Nets. I'll take it a step back too, and I'll give you a little bit about my story. I grew up in the New York area, about an hour outside of New York City. Grew up playing basketball, AAU. You know, ran my life, right? Like I tried to play softball, I tried to play lacrosse, I tried to play soccer, everything like that. It was all about hoop all day, every day. Being in the New York area, I went to Liberty games all the time. Like I grew up, Becky Hammon was my girl. That was just like, I aspired to be here more than anybody. I had jerseys, I had everything. I had merch, I had stuffed animals. What was actually so funny is the other day, I was at my parents' house over the weekend. We're going through, like, my mom's like, hey, there's like this bag of junk. You need to go through all this old stuff of yours. I'm going through it. And I find a Liberty jersey that, I kid you not, is from like 1997, like the beginning.
Rebecca worth Lobo. A lot. You want to hold on to that? You want to sell it to me?
I literally put it on. It still fits me. So my coworkers, a few of my coworkers are here. You guys are going to see me wear that to the office. Don't be alarmed. It still fits me. So anyways, I grew up. I'm loving the WNBA, the MNBA. You know, Ari likes to coin the...
We call it what it is.
Yeah. But, you know, I knew from a young age, like, I wanted to work in basketball. I wanted to work in sports. Before I even knew that working for a pro team was a job, I remember being in, like, 8th grade, sitting with my AAU teammates, and I said to one of them, like, I want to be... This is a thing that I'm going to say. I was like, I want to be in marketing for the Knicks. And she's like, cool, well, like, I want to be in PR for the Knicks. And I'm like, we'll do that together, right? Like, someday. And this is, again, we're 13 years old. We didn't even know that this was a job that could even be had. And even in college, like, I went to a small Division III school, played basketball, loved that experience, majored in business, minored in studio art, really, like, kind of just went through it, didn't really know what I was gonna do. For such an ambitious kid in high school, I really went into college and I was like, I don't know, I'll just go through this. I'll play basketball. Had a couple injuries, didn't work out as planned, but and ended up graduating college in 3 years too, and kind of came out of it like, okay, what now? And I landed an internship in minor league baseball. And really, it was my fallback plan. I wanted to be in New York City, and I wanted to work in an ad agency. I was applying to agencies everywhere. I just didn't have what they were looking for. I ended up working in minor league baseball. And at first, I'm like, okay, you know, like, we'll see how this goes. I'm getting paid, like, you know, pennies to work this internship. I'm like pulling the tarp, and I'm doing all these like insane things. But I knew just like right off the bat that I belonged working in sports. And even just right from the beginning, it didn't matter what I was doing, just like that energy around the crowd. And baseball's not my thing. Like I said, basketball is the bread and butter, but I knew that sports was for me. So I had a long journey through lots of different jobs, similar to you, KP. Like after I worked in minor league baseball, took a role working for Army Athletics at West Point, and was doing marketing for Army. Got to go to a lot of Army Navy games and enjoyed that. But my goal was to end up in the NBA as a creative. I knew right around that time, like, I just had to do whatever it took to get to that place. So I ended up taking a series of risks, which were just, even just looking back, I mean, this is 10 years ago now, and I can't believe that at 21 years old, I picked up and I moved to Kentucky. And I'm from New York, and I go there, and these people are looking at me like, they're like, who is this girl? Like, so I go to Kentucky to take a job at IMG College, and was doing a lot of print publications and things of that sort for a lot of different college programs, UK and Tennessee, Baylor, UConn, a lot of the college schools. But again, pro sports was just always the goal. Was there for a year. I ended up taking a role with the Phoenix Suns. So again, I move even further away from New York. And I get there, and it's awesome because it's March. The Suns are just about to finish up their season. They make the playoffs, and I'm the youngest person on the totem pole. So they're like, hey, you know, you're going to work for the Mercury. You're going to do all the Mercury stuff. And I was like, okay, like, let's go. The Merc were the best team in the league that season, won the championship. It was such a blessing. Like, I didn't even necessarily realize when I got there, like, they were going to be like, hey, you know, you're Merc girl now, right? And I embraced that. That summer, I was Merc girl. Like, DT, Brittany Griner, you know, our girl, and that team was awesome. And so I got to witness a championship season. It was so much fun. So I was in Phoenix for a year. And then, you know, the goal again was to come back to New York in some fashion, and eventually, you know, again, my goal was the Knicks, but I
hope your coworkers aren't like, you know.
No, they know that they all worked for the Garden, all three of them.
Didn't we all?
So I actually ended up taking a job with ESPN, and I was living out in Bristol. Brendan Kaminsky's here somewhere. I saw him, worked with him. You know, had a good time there, but I knew again that my calling was to work in basketball solely. So got the job with the Nets 6 years ago. This upcoming season will be my 7th, and you know, I'd love it. I think, you know, just I guess to talk a little bit about my role, it's really cool. I mean, you know, the Liberty are obviously a very important part of our organization, and we're so lucky that our ownership group prioritizes the Liberty just as much. I mean, you know, you're at all the games, right? Like, they prioritize the Liberty just as much as the Nets. They're at all those games. They love the women. I mean, and the Liberty the WNBA is so important, as you know, right? So yeah, but you know, my primary focus in terms of my day-to-day is Nets. But I'm so happy to be where I am. We focus a lot. My team focuses on kind of brand development, brand identity, designing courts and uniforms. We do campaign development, so for season-long campaigns, playoff campaigns, all-star campaigns, that sort of thing. I do a lot of kind of apparel and custom typography, and I love to, you know, design. I paint custom sneakers. So does KP, my girl, and do a little bit of that kind of on the side. But yeah, you know, I'm so grateful to be where I am. I'm so grateful to be up here with these women and talk a little bit more about what we do. So,
what I love is that give it up for her. I mean, a little too quiet for me. But what I love is you both have such different journeys than I did. But the trend is that we're all willing to be flexible and set a standard for what we want. I know when I went into HighlightHER and built it up, I had the privilege of having the connection with Turner Sports. And so one thing about me, I'm never going to be quiet, right? So I'm like, hey, Tony, NBA TV has some open programming. Let's talk about some women real quick. And so we have WNBA Weekly. We're able to take this social media platform that's intended to be a community for women and girls in sport and culture, and we can put that on linear programming, right? And so the way I see it is the more I can talk about it and keep it consistent for y'all, it's going to stick in your head at some point. Just like she said, the WNBA is so important. It doesn't take much to infiltrate people's minds, y'all. Infiltrate their minds with your passion and be very persistent with it. And like Chuck was saying before, learn your language. I was lucky enough to learn my language pretty early on and know how to speak it very fluently to the point where you're like, all right, shut up. But that ain't gonna happen because I'm the only child and I don't like hearing the word no. So being able to utilize bigger entities like Warner Media and Turner Sports in order to get this message of, hey, women's sports isn't trending, where it's the norm now, and being able to get in the community like what we did with her home court and really making an impact in that way, or even partnering with people like Nike for the power of her and getting to see, I would be able to interview you about how you want to do this and be the first one and your journey there. I think storytelling, the power of storytelling is really, really important too, because you can connect with people. Even if you don't care about the sport, you can care about the person. And so you'll follow the sport. And so it translates really, really nicely in the growth of the game in general. Or if I'm like a woman who likes men's sports, which that's not me, but if I were to be one, I can know how to navigate the space in that. So I would know to be like, oh, I can be a creative director, or I can be everything that she was to everybody all over the country, and just keep building that. If you can see it, you can be it, right? So that's the goal, I think, of all three of us, to be able to be that representation for people to just really step into whatever space they want in sports, whether that's women or men's sports.
That's facts.
Per.
I think the other thing too is how we support each other. Jessie, we love sneakers, right? I was customizing sneakers, and I kind of skipped over this, but me and Britt founded Locker Room while we were in Atlanta, and it truly was an outlet because we love sneakers, we love pop culture, we were making memes, all types of stuff, and we couldn't do that at work, so we're like, we're gonna create a space for us to do that. Well, I love doing custom sneakers. Britt didn't know anything about it. She's like, I wanna do that. So I'm like, all right, cool. Jessie gave us an opportunity, which we actually, for 2 years in a row, got to do the sneakers for the Seattle Storm for their Force for Change campaign. So creating those custom sneakers, working with the players to create those stories and kind of give them an outlet to showcase their creativity. It's like, shout out to you, Jessie, because that's so important to be able to reach across the table and provide your peer an opportunity. So I appreciate you guys. She's awesome. So
I bought shoes. I bought customs from Jessie before. I know your work really well, so shout out to both of y'all.
Yeah, there's definitely this through line of sneakers here, like you said. But I just want to, I guess, to your point, touch on relationships and how important relationships are. Some of the best opportunities that I've gotten in my career, whether it's a job or, we all kind of have this sort of like you mentioned, a sort of side gig or like an outlet that you do your creative work on the side. I have that myself too. And, I think I just look at every relationship is an opportunity. You never know who you're talking to, right? Like someone in this room who I don't even know yet could say like, oh, let's work together on XYZ, right? And I think not looking at, networking as this like stuffy, like corporate, oh, like what can you do for me mentality. I love just like creating genuine bonds with people, and just like we just like talk on Twitter, and now we're friends, and then, I was able to give you a business opportunity, right? Like we were never like, hey, what do you got for me? Like, what job do you have for me? Or like, how can you help me? It's like, let's just like create a bond that's genuine and real. And then that, that very unexpected thing could turn into that person being like, oh, I know this person, and they're looking for someone to help with this. And you're like, oh, I know someone. And since they're a good person, they're not like just looking for like, to get something out of everything. That I think has been so beneficial for me in everything that I've gone through in my career.
I know I've said communicate your passion with people, but be receptive of other people's passion. Testing. Oh. So you know how to fuel that too, right? So if I know Jessie is a sneaker designer, customizer, I'm gonna be like, okay, I like to be fly at Liberty Games. Can you make these forces for me real quick? And she did. But it's all about putting your people on. It's all about the the male allies out there. Hi, y'all. Hi. It's all about knowing that we're capable and equipped to do the same jobs. It's not like a let me extend this for you for charity type of situation. And women, yes, Erica, and women in sport too, knowing that not all women should be confined to women's sports. That's not everybody's calling, and that's fine. We shouldn't just depend on women to carry women's sports either. So I really encourage you all, HighlightHER, we're about 60-40 for male to female ratio, but I encourage more like allyship there on the women's sports end with men consuming women's sports. Don't just put that on women. And especially with platforms too that encourage women's sports, consume it as a man. And tell your friends about it. Us women, we're used to holding everything down. Come on, give us a break at some point. But look to your left and your right and know that, like, hey, I know that she's a great, designer. Or I know that she's great with this. Let me put her on just because she's capable, not because it's the checklist thing to do. So that's what I just want to encourage everybody out there. These languages, I'm going back to Chuck because I like to learn, and I learned from him an hour ago, and I want us to be able to be receptive of people's languages and actually listen and take a beat and be like, okay, I remember that she does this. Let me put her in this role. It makes everybody better. Everybody.
I agree. I think the last thing I'll add on that is you touched on it a little bit, the importance of networking. Like, I am an introvert at heart. Like, hands down, I will go in a corner and just live my best life. Only child syndrome, but
same. No, I'm an introvert too. I understand completely.
It happens, but I think a lot of the opportunities that I've gotten is because I forced myself to actually communicate with people. And so for me, my peers too, but also the people that were above me, not being afraid to bring something to the table or push back a little bit. I remember Morgenshaw Parker, who was amazing. She's the president of the Dream now, and she used to be, well, I don't know her title. I don't know the C's, but she was something for the Atlanta Falcons, and of course she was over my department. So I don't know. I can't ever. Sweets. One of those. And I remember just continuing to stay in contact with her. And I'm like, hey, how's it going? How's it doing? Not like pesky or anything like that, but naturally forming those connections with people that are in the building you work in, because some of those people leave and become amazing. They're already amazing. So tapping into the network you have around you as well, your peers. And just from that, being able to have an opportunity, I think this year we did the Dreams Court over. And that was something
which is fire.
Thank you.
Fire.
And shout out to Britt for the logo on that court. But it was amazing to have that opportunity. And that all came from a conversation of, hey, how's it going? What's up? You in basketball now. That's my world. I love you. So how's it going? And just from there, again, that natural, just like, you guys are amazing. You should be able to, and it wasn't a thing I'm pushing for. I'm not hitting you up for an opportunity. But, hey, how is it going? Because I know a transition from sport to sport is hard regardless of what the sport is. So just having those connections and keeping those lines of communication open is so influential.
I love it. Should we leave time for questions?
I want to say one more thing. I know I'm a wordy one. But I know a lot of times as women, we're afraid to step into our own and really own what we do. So everyone out there, I would encourage you, if somebody said, hey, what do you do? Speak on it in such a way that is thorough enough that you can communicate exactly what you can bring to the table, because it's hard enough getting to that point where we can sit at the table. So I always say I don't understand lack of confidence. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I think that everybody should have that mentality. If somebody asks you what you do, if they're taking the time out to listen to what you're passionate about, communicate it. Know that language and communicate that, because, hey, that might be your one opportunity. We don't get that many. But hopefully that will change. But right now, just know how to clearly communicate that, because I think that anybody who walks up to me can tell you exactly what my passion points are, because I'm going to say it exhaustingly. But it's not a gluttonous way. It's not like a, hey, I'm just, consuming everybody's time with this. It's for a purpose. So just know your purpose, know your passion, and know how to communicate it. But yes, we can do questions. We got 3 minutes left, y'all.
That was easy. That was
Sure. The cost of inaction is greater than the risk for my thing in particular with women's sports. And so just knowing, first of all, as somebody who's trying to get the investment, know how to properly communicate that. Know how to back the stats, like how WNBA coverage is up 200%, or not coverage, consumption's up 200%. The NWSL has grown 400%, and it's because people are actually receiving it. It's accessible to people. So just numbers talk, and then getting out of the mentality, especially for women's sports, that it's not just a trend. We have leagues that are 26 years strong now. It's not a new model, but we're moving into this next generation of women's sports where, Title IX, 50 years, and just strike while it's hot. So, I mean, if that's how they want to do it, do the trend and then say this is why it's sustainable. So just that's what I would say.
I'd say on our end, I'm a male soccer team, but we support a lot of female soccer teams within our stadium, right? And I think one thing that I push our brand is to be authentic and to not be reactionary. I think that's where a lot of brands go wrong. It's always, oh, I'm going to do this because this happened, or oh, they're playing in our stadium, so we'll support them this week. It's like, if we're going to support them, we're going to support them year round. How can we figure out what programming we need to make? So, and as a result for that, it's like, okay, can we do any events within the community that are focused on girls soccer? So just trying to figure out how you could be more authentic and, again, not reactionary from my standpoint.
Yeah, and you talked a little bit about trend too. It's similar to how, like, during Pride Month, every single brand puts, the flag in their avatar. It's like, but what are you actually doing, right? So I think, like, backing it up with action is so important. And you talked a little bit about allyship too. I mean, like, for the Nets, all the Nets players have been supporting the Liberty players at games. Like, even just that sort of thing is, like, it goes such a long way to just pushing the women's game forward too.
No, you were up first.
I just wanted to ask about what Ari was talking about, like, just don't put it on the women to be the only ones being the fans, the men need to watch it too.
Period.
In terms of coverage, because you look and you have divided spaces sometimes where it's ESPN, but there's an ESPNW, and a lot of the women's coverage doesn't show up on the main account, and how you kind of bridge that crossover. Or if you think it's, like, better to have these separate spaces.
I loves me a space that I can claim as my own while also putting pressure on the main accounts to do that. So what Bleacher Report and Turner Sports are doing is we're making pledges to do increase, I don't want to misquote the number, but increased coverage on the women's sports side, that we're not just putting it on HighlightHER to do. We're holding them accountable to a certain percentage of content that that's going to be women. That way you tailor your audience to it, because it can be jarring, right? If you haven't done it historically, it's going to take people back. But just holding the companies accountable for, like, hey, if you expect us to know this sport, this tempo, y'all should know the women's side as well. And so if that's us having to take the charge and, like, keep telling them, like, look, what I'm not going to do is carry you through this, that's fine. But I do like the separate accounts too, but I also like the putting the pressure on the main accounts.
I'm actually genuinely curious. I have a question for you, Ari. I saw some chatter on social the last couple of days about, like, obviously we had the women's, or, the WNBA All-Star Weekend in Chicago, and people were saying, it should have been this weekend here in Vegas so that it could have been combined with, Summer League. Everyone's in town for Summer League on the men's side. I want to hear. I'm genuinely curious.
I loved WNBA All-Star in Chicago. I think that it had great energy around the city of Chicago coming off a championship. And so instead of the dependency on the MNBA and their summer league things that I don't care about, you cater to the fans that the arena was sold out. And it was sold out in advance. And so I think it's very strange that people are saying that it needs to be in alignment with the MNBA at all times, because if you look at the WNBA fan and you see a sold out arena, where did we really misstep? Do you know what I mean? So I just encourage people to not depend on the allyship or the juxtaposition with MNBA and WNBA, and just know that, like, the fans are out there. And we don't always have to do it with the men. We don't always have to, like, hold hands and skip down the street with the men. But I said in my Twitter spaces yesterday, I think that it should always be the reigning championship city. But I understand how business-wise that doesn't make sense. But Chicago did a great job.
I like that.
Yes, Boo. Hey.
I wanted to ask, so like you said, the WNBA is very aware of where the audience is. I think enthusiasts and fans are very aware, like, when it comes to equal pay, about how, like, there's broadcast restrictions, there's partnership differences, there's all these
that exist within these spaces. And putting pressure on the corporations and the channels is good, but what else can we do besides tagging each other in our creative endeavors and getting to help accelerate this timeline to get things looking balanced?
Oh, okay. Visibility and accessibility is what's key. So if you know that something's streaming at some point, obviously tell people. I think that there, especially with how much it's increased over the past 2 years, you saw what happened with COVID, right? There was nothing else on there, so they had no excuse not to show the WNBA, and you saw a spike, and that's not by coincidence. And so I think that now going forward, these network deals and negotiations are going to change a lot because the previous negotiations are heavily undervalued. Without getting into much detail, that's what's happening. And so you'll see that within the next few years, it's going to be increased coverage because there's literally no point of not. It's missed opportunity at this point. Again, cost of inaction is greater than the risk. Erica?
But both of y'all have worked in different sports that either have a partner women's team or in a city that has women's sports as well. I would love to know, and I didn't want to ask Ari this because I don't are doing this, but even in women's sports, there's sometimes I don't know what the right word is, but there's not that connection to lift each other up. And I wonder what was the experience like working in women's sports with a women's sports team or around a city that had women's sports, and maybe what the communication could have been and was lacking at the time.
Man, that's a tough question. I would say in Atlanta, and granted, when I moved to Atlanta, I think that was 2017, I knew about the dream because I loved basketball, and naturally I had that tie-in. But when I actually went to the city, I didn't see anything that said Atlanta Dream. So I think not even, you spoke to visibility, right? Like, there was no visibility. I mean, because I worked across from the State Farm Arena now, I knew that they played. So I saw a billboard here and there, or like maybe a social graphic through a digital ad or something like that, but I didn't see anything Atlanta Dream. So naturally, someone else that in Atlanta, just a ton of people just coming in and out of the city. If you don't see something, how can you even know it's there? Or if you've never been exposed to it, how do you even know it's there? So I think, man, I probably lost your question in that, but the visibility was so important, I think, and now you're starting to see a lot more visibility in that, whether that's through social content, the players themselves amplifying their own personal brands. You see players getting endorsements a lot more now, and they're able to showcase that. So I think, truly for me, it's the visibility aspect of it, because if you don't see it and you never hear about it, it's like, does it I mean, you know it exists, but it's like, where is it, right? So it's hard to amplify that, or hard to kind of, big brother, I'm gonna stick my hand out and help you with that. And then from a team side, I think naturally, and I'll say this too, it's interesting because it happens in men's sports as well, where there's no connection between the teams. So it's so interesting to me how you can be in a city and the teams don't support each other to that degree as well. So that's a loaded one. It's gonna vary city by city in my standpoint, but
yeah, definitely gonna vary city by city. And I think, like, to the point of, you know, working in different cities, when I was in Phoenix, the Mercury had the best team at that point in WNBA history. They won the title. They had players that were like bona fide superstars, and so they had no problem, you know, filling the arena. It was incredible. Their fan base, I mean, they're rabid. They're awesome, right? It's awesome. And then, you know, I kind of come here, and, you know, in the New York market, the Liberty had a tough go of it the last couple years before, you know, we brought them into BSE, but and when the size came and took them over as part of the ownership group, but they were playing in Westchester Westchester County Center, which was like, for those who don't know, like, it's like a 2,000 maximum capacity.
An auditorium.
It's, yeah, like they play like the high school basketball championships there, and like then the WNBA team in the area is playing there. So I think just even like having owners like the size come in and just like say, no, like we're putting our arms around you, we're bringing you guys back, we're gonna play at Barclays Center, like we're building it back up. And I think, you know, even like I think something like NIL deals in college will probably help you know, like the women build their brand. I mean, on the men too, but like speaking about women specifically, like someone like Sabrina coming up through Oregon was like, you know, one of like just had insane popularity. I think with NIL deals and just like the players in college being able to build their brand up throughout those 4 years that they're in college, and we know how big the college game is, that's probably going to help a lot of players just have that notoriety when they get to the W, so that it's like they're not just coming out of nowhere. Like, you've seen this girl, you know, just doing her thing and building her brand for these 4 years while she's playing at UConn or Louisville, what have you, and then hopefully that will also help boost her, you know, the fan bases, so that players, you know, have that kind of like name recognition when they get to the league.
Hashtag don't kill me. Our ally back there has been raising his hand. I just want to, just real quick.
That is a great question. It's been interesting because I've been seeing a trend of that happening. Naturally, I'm going to speak about Atlanta because I was there for so long, but flag football was something that we decided as a group that we were going to be very passionate about and intentional about. So holding the showcase there, making sure we get people involved, giving them a presence inside the stadium where it's like, I think there was like a high school football helmet wall that was in the stadium, and it's like, oh, that's great. If you're a guy and you play football, you can, you know, get in here. But the ladies flag football or the girls flag football, they were killing it. I mean, they were like killing it to the point where so many other states were wanting to get involved. How do I get in this program? And I think it was sold out at the time. And I'm no expert in it, but I just remember it was a very intentional decision to say, hey, we're going to give them a space because they belong as well. You can't just separate the two. So how do you continue to push that boundary? How do you continue to promote them so that people realize that there is a girls flag football team that's pretty influential and they play games in this stadium? And that's huge for the girls that were involved in that program as well. And you continue to build that. But that's kind of the only thing I can think of off the top of my head.
Consume it enough to know how to let it, like, make it grow. So just consume it and spread it. Sorry, Tracy, I'm out.
We're getting yelled at. Oh, thank you guys so much for listening.